One moment. We are starting in just a second. All right. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate you being here and joining us for this episode of A Renewed Hope in Digital Assets. I am AI MINDSystems Foundation's co-founder and chief executive officer and your host of the show. And today I am joined by one of our newest colleagues at AI MINDSystems Foundation, Rebecca Kontosek. Hey, Rebecca. Welcome to the team. So excited to unpack your new role and your vision on today's show. How are you doing today?
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm very excited. My day's going great. And how are you, Heather?
I'm excited to be here and honestly have been so looking forward to uh, all of your incredible contributions getting started here. I'm just absolutely thrilled. So just a little bit of housekeeping for those that are participating through Zoom specifically. We will be taking audience Q&A through the Zoom platform. You have to be registered through Zoom and on Zoom if you're listening to this on LinkedIn, X, or YouTube Live. Um, DM us and we'll be happy to follow up. Uh, we'll have time at the end for engagement for anyone on Zoom. So Rebecca, I'd love to start this by let's let the world know how it is that you came to Web3,
Mhm.
brought you to the field to start with, and share some more about your passions for the industry.
Yeah, I think my entrance into crypto was a lot more relatable on what a lot of people would say is the degenerate side of crypto, very community focused, very self-taught. I spent hours, probably hundreds of hours in Discord, just becoming completely obsessed with everything that was happening. The first entry point into a real light bulb moment going off for me was during COVID, spending a lot of time at home. And really, the pinnacle for me, it sounds funny to say, but it was the stock moment when community members are coming together. It was a big moment that I have never seen before in my lifetime, which was really people coming together and they were able to compete with these giants and these corporations. And I thought, wow, this is mind blowing and it's incredible. And I was there in the Reddit threads and in the thick of the trenches and seeing everybody scream hold. And it was just so invigorating. And it was
Diamond
something,
hand.
yeah, always
Third
done.
diamond hand.
Exactly. And so it
Mhm.
was just so cool. I've never seen this before. And that was moment one for me. And so since then, I got really more into the NFT side of things, the crypto side of things. 2021 was my big entrance into Web3 from a professional and working standpoint. So I got in contact with a couple different projects, a couple different teams. One thing sort of led to another, and then I ended up helping brands as big as Walmart and Crayola. And at that point, there were not a lot of people that knew anything about NFTs or community or market and how to be able to strategically enter them. And so I was well positioned to be able to go to these corporations and having my background as well, just coming off of a degree, I studied international business. And so that allowed me to have different touch points in a global sense and really put together everything that I've learned just self-taught in crypto and start helping clients with the information that I gathered. So that was sort of my entry point and what brought me into crypto in the early stages. And then since then, I've worked with a lot of different companies. I mentioned Walmart as well as BIC, the lighters, Forbes, L'Oreal, a lot of big crypto communities as well. Ladies of Bored Ape and doing a lot of events and exchanges. And since then, it's just been really a snowball. And I feel most passionate about blockchain because it's definitely the right area of the world that I know that I belong in terms of decentralization. I understand a lot of the bigger problems in the world with our financial system, and that always just made me feel uneasy. And so blockchain really offered a lot of the solutions in my head, and that made sense ethically, and it was more aligned to the future that I was excited to see. So very proud and very honored to be able to join AI Mind Systems now and continue on that evolution and do great things.
Oh, you are such a crypto native. such a completely long down the rabbit hole, in the weeds in every detail of the industry for these last several years. Before we get into your specific new accountabilities here at AI Mind Systems, I'd love to get your take on what have you observed as major blockers and problems in the industry. I'd love like maybe some nuances that are not self-evident, that you've observed, and maybe from the perspective you've done a lot of investor relations over that time, and
Mhm.
attempted to get a number of communities to breakout status. Um, what have you seen about what has held the industry back?
Yeah, it's such I could probably talk about this just for hours, and there's so many different elements and smaller things about crypto that oftentimes might go unnoticed. And even if we just isolate and look at from the investor perspective over the last few years, it was a very different life cycle in 2021. A lot of investors will openly say that their investment thesis was spray and pray. There was so much volume, everything was doing well, and so it was not a lot of scrutiny. And that in itself causes a lot of problems when we're looking at a market standpoint. The problem that keeps repeating history in crypto that I see most fundamentally is that we experience very unnatural growth cycles. It's unlike any other industry, and it's very unsustainable. And so in 2021, we saw this with NFTs. It's very abnormal to wake up one morning and your JPEG is worth $2 million. That shouldn't happen in the regular world. And so the fact that that happens normally in crypto, it is unsustainable. It causes obvious market volatility and also some toxicity in the market itself. It's can be hard on mindset. It can be hard on retail investors. That there's always these new cycles that come with these unnatural growth cycles. So 2021 was the era of NFTs. Within this last year, we saw it more moving into the area of IDOs and meme coins. That's also kind of coming to a tail end. And I'm hoping that within all of these iterations, crypto is a very nascent industry, and so this is going through growing pains. And with every iteration, we're establishing more professional standards and more globally accepted standards, and it's making crypto less scary for the rest of the world. And I can 100% understand why my mother, for example, would never touch this, and it's just mind-blowing to her, and that will probably never reach her world. But with each iteration and with each sort of hype cycle, we're learning new things, and crypto is evolving as an industry and learning more to solve problems and focus less on the 0 to 100 or 1,000x within a week time frame. So I think that might be the single most biggest challenge is differentiating crypto between the value cases and the solutions that blockchain and the actual technology can solve, and sort of having a separation between that and the culture side of crypto, which is very player versus player. It's very hype cycle, and it can be a little bit chaotic and a little bit toxic. So there's the trading side of things, and then there's the real ecosystem and development and technology side of things. And as we move on with time, it seems that that line is becoming more obvious, and both work within each other to make the entire industry successful. But it's just very young as an industry, so it's interesting to see it move through the cycles.
Yeah, it's I think I've I've been in the blockchain and crypto space since about 2016, and on my side, the whole entire time from 2016 forward, I've been focused on these extremely um, heavily regulated, high risk, human impact scenarios, trying to solve, major wicked problems in healthcare and life sciences and things along those lines. And the entire time it has felt like I am swimming upstream against the dominant culture in crypto that you're describing,
Right.
which has been all about, in some cases, bros and Lambos, wild and crazy events, lots of focus on what I would say are interesting technologies applied in very frivolous ways.
Mhm.
And that has been this tension for me. And I have to believe, other founders and actors in the industry, um,
Mhm.
that have been trying to advance outside of specifically only fintech use cases or finance use cases, or what I will say are very playful, playful uses of the technology. So what do you think is, I mean, you have been interested in impact cases all the way along.
Mhm.
While we do have limited small scenarios of impact occurring through Web3 communities in different pockets around the world,
Mhm.
I wouldn't say we have achieved mass adoption of any person-centered or consumer-centered case, including, urgently needed, even desperately needed impact scenarios.
Mhm.
In your new role, you've chosen to accept this mission, which is a really tall order, but to be that breakout into the mainstream where we
Mhm.
reach humanity at massive scale uh, through our strategies and approaches. Uh, what makes you confident that you can pull that off? What's you're bullish? I know you are. You're excited.
Yeah.
Tell me why.
Yeah, for sure. And since I've been more on the investor relations side of things, I get pitched every day and I see decks every day and I see new projects that are building things that maybe some are better than others and some teams are more qualified than others. And so I definitely have a very high level of scrutiny now whenever evaluating new opportunities or evaluating new places to join and to place myself. And so what really stood out the most to me about AI Minds and why I felt like I'd be able to have the best impact was everything that Heather you've done and achieved so far. It's very breathtaking and mind-blowing, just the success and the feats that you've achieved in your own professional career. Not to mention, yeah, I'll let you have a moment there. And then
Uh,
not
I have to I have to remember that it does not serve me to argue with people when they say things like that about me, but I just have to,
yes.
hey.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you very much.
Yeah, we love to give our flowers in crypto, so you definitely deserve it. And I was even more excited after meeting you and then seeing the Rolodex of everyone else who was on the team. And it just made sense from one person clicking after another. You really thought out the right people to connect and put together to be able to solve something. And so it's all the right minds together, which was very exciting for me. The other part is definitely the regulatory aspect and the reason of why now right now is probably going to be the most crypto friendly year that we've seen ever. And I hope, knock on wood, I don't jinx that. But it just seems very optimistic from a global perspective. Governments are accepting blockchain more than ever. The US now has a crypto friendly president in theory, and I hope that that flushes out the way that we're all excited for it to. And then even on a global scale, there are full countries that are adopting CBDCs and integrating blockchain into the way that they operate business. So the timing was right, the team was right. And then why am I right? I on my own, not to give myself flowers, but I also have a very extensive understanding of the market and understanding of where things are moving forward and a very global aspect to that too. So within investor relations, I'm quite connected in different markets that are really important to solving these problems that are actively putting effort into it. So whether it's I'm from Canada, the US, of course, also the EU, and then GCC countries as well. So UAE, Saudi, Qatar, within that region, they're making strides to be able to integrate blockchain more and more. And so bringing all of these together and bringing my own network, I'm definitely confident and excited about the impact that we can make over even within the next 12 months and to start seeing things moving. So I don't like to place myself in places unless I'm confident that I have, instant links to start making. And so it just made a lot of sense to me. And even from an investment perspective, I mentioned earlier that in 2021, it was standard to do spray and pray, and that does not exist anymore. Now, investors, I mean, again, thankfully, they have evolved, and now we're with a higher level of scrutiny. And they're only excited about projects that are moving the world forward and helping humanity and progressing civilization. And that's exactly what AI Mind System is doing. So, from an investor relations standpoint, I'm proud to speak on behalf of AI minds to the investors that I know, and I'm honored to do so as well.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. Thank you so much. So one of the things that's unusual, many Web3 projects go after a specific use case, a narrow use case.
Hmm.
And of course they always have roadmaps, and they always want to expand on those narrow use cases. And
Hmm.
it's funny in healthcare, unrelated to Web3, that's also the pattern in digital health solutions generally, is find some kind of something that is referred to as low-hanging fruit, figure out a way to solve a narrow problem, and in the solving of that problem, the world gives you permission to think bigger, and to move into a wider frame of reference. Uh, at AI Mind Systems Foundation, rightly or wrongly, history will tell. If this ended up being sheer folly or hubris or insanity or the thing that really made a difference, we're working on, and I know you know this, Rebecca, but just for our audience, we're working on what we think of as systemic interventions that provide massively generalizable and reusable capability in a totally person-centered model, that drives the agency, dignity, empowerment, and well-being of individual people, families, and communities the world over. Uh, these these aren't like use case two, even three, and they deal with systems sciences and systemic approaches, meaning they fall into not one, but several different business models, several different revenue models, and an impact agenda overseen by the foundation, which, for what it's worth, is not of the same focus and intent of many foundations in Web3, where the foundation is set up to manage a protocol and a treasury and so on. We do have that aspect of it, but we are actually running a major impact agenda directly, separately from and in addition to the protocol functions. So an investor or stakeholders or strategic partners in the public sector or private sector around the world might look at that and say, and I have heard this more than once, it looks like you're boiling the ocean.
Right.
This looks like 5 or 6 different businesses. And then I laugh and say, yeah, actually, it is 5 or 6 different businesses.
Mm-hmm.
um, I know you are really inspired by this systemic intervention, this getting to root cause.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak a little bit to your perspective about why that is actually, while it's the road less traveled, it's the road less traveled, it's not the typical playbook. Why do you think it's the right playbook for a Web3 person-centered mass scale, mass adoption approach?
Yeah, I am excited about their approach because of the decentralized science landscape right now in Web3, being that it is very new and very nascent, and there aren't any top of mind, maybe a couple big projects that are solving problems. And so because of that, it really means that there is space for AI minds to come in and have a holistic approach. And I'm sure that's going to result in partnerships being formed and liaisons being made with all the other projects that are doing amazing things. And I also would hope having such a big vision is going to inspire smaller teams and teams that might not have resources, or for whatever reason, they're just not getting the traction that they probably deserve. And so it does create an all-encompassing space for a lot of different projects to succeed. And I think it's important not to microscopic in on one problem, because if we are serious about solving like an overarching systemic and foundational problem, then it doesn't make sense to have just one of the verticals. It would feel like we're addressing 10% of it and missing the bigger picture. And so the fact that the bigger picture is there, it's outlined, and then there's the vertical solving everything, it shows a great deal of understanding and awareness of what is needed. And I don't think that it's discouraging because it's such an overarching view. I would be worried, and I know that roadmaps typically do scare crypto communities, and it's because they're used to retail traders are they've been through it. They're used to getting taken advantage of by projects. They're used to this long roadmap promising the world never happening. And so it can be a red flag for a lot of every day and even some investors when they see that they get scared. However, because there's all the systems in place and because everything is so well thought out, it's not just pie in the sky. Maybe we'll do an AI game in a year. It's actually all fleshed out and it's all planned and all the right people are already a part of it. And one can't really happen in a silo without the other. So it makes sense from an investment perspective. If I'm not a science expert, then I might even have concerns if it is too narrow. Maybe I'm not an expert at data centers or insurance or any of the specific verticals, but I would be excited about the overarching what's going forward. So it allows different opportunities for investors to buy in based on their level of understanding and based on what they're excited for. So for a lot of different reasons, I think that it's fitting and I think that it definitely makes sense given DeSci, given the market, given investors, and also given what we're actually building. So I love it.
That's that's great. And I do think that some different people have different mindsets and they're more, intrinsically optimistic or intrinsically pessimistic, more or less impact focused. One of the things that we're really passionate about is economic sustainability. We're seeking to create new institutions and capabilities that can be permanently trustworthy by individual people, some of whom or many of whom have had generations of broken institutional trust. That means we can't approach the creation of these new institutions in a model that would have our own operations at considerable risk of financial solvency in the mid to long term. So our for those of you that might be tuning in for the first time or hearing about this for the first time, our fundamental thesis is that while Web3 has created technologies that can facilitate data sovereignty, our industry has yet to produce a business model that makes that financially sustainable and that also delivers on the value chain, the escalating, accelerating value chain on personal data and enterprise data estates without a reliance on taxpayer subsidy or a reliance on ongoing forever investment rounds or similar. So this framework of creating a new economic model and fully financializing data as an asset class is a first principle, and that spans DeFi. Our scientific applications span DeSci. We are creating new critical infrastructure with a high level of security that's deep in and so on and so forth. This idea of creating a new economic structure out of this asset class that today is infrequently valued financially and where all trade is opaque, off market, there's no price discovery function, and individual data subjects accrue exactly 0% of the economic volume from what in just healthcare alone is $66.5 billion a year, very conservatively as of 2023. So one of the things I think that is the most exciting, if I put my, the ethos of the entire Web3 community hat on and the spirit and intent and history of where we've been to date, this idea of not just solving problems in TradFi, not just creating material efficiencies and security improvements and automations in all of today's workflows, but also creating an entirely new economic structure that we already know is comprising a huge part of the total economic volume of planet Earth today already. It's just shadowed in the equities of the largest data monetizing organizations in the world. So as an overarching theme of creating and operating a new kind of data and AI economy, do you like that as the top level framing of the highest level of how this thing is financially sustained? And how do you think that relates to communities you know of across Web3 land and their visions?
Yeah, it definitely goes hand in hand with what I mentioned earlier too. And I like that you mentioned business model. And the business model paradox has been one that has been around for a while in crypto, and it's been a large influx of funds and influx of success, but not a lot of sustainability. And that's why we see things die and cycle out almost every 18 months within crypto markets. And so definitely we are moving towards hunger and excitement towards sustainable business models, things that do reflect more traditional finance structures, and as you mentioned, all the benefits that come with it. And so injecting things that we see work on a global scale and we know that they do, and then hyperimposing that and having it work in a Web3 environment, it's just as exciting, and it's definitely going to result in business models that make sense and that people can get behind, and that not just an institutional investor, but also an everyday community member is going to understand and rally behind. It's also why I was excited to be joining the team as well, because I might have a lot of experience in crypto, but I don't know a single thing about a lot of other industries. And so I do think that I'm a great voice to be able to bridge that and to be able to speak to others that are coming from my background and my understanding level of not just science, but deep in, as you mentioned, and everything else that we are tackling, and financial models and business models, and being able to translate and get people opting in and understanding why this is the future and why we're moving forward in this way. I think that it's a great fit from that perspective. So I am very optimistic. A lot of people say that I'm delusionally optimistic, so I always try to add a grain of salt to everything. But I do think it's the right way and the right model to be approaching things when you're speaking about the overarching structure.
Delusionally optimistic.
Yeah.
When
Been
we were
told
considering
more than
bringing
once
you
in my
on
life.
board, delusionally was never used as a descriptor, but I think that's funny and probably said about me as well, though more frequently behind my back than in person. But the you know, one of the elements of all of this is systems of governance and inclusion that can bring people forward in not only economic participation but legal participation and the ability to reclaim and assert civil liberties and privacy protections. So we have this robust strategy to create a new data and AI economy. We've mentioned it being financially inclusive of data subjects, and that's the revenue model. But privacy, governance, ethics, they're also really intense focus areas for us. And I mean, Web3 has been focused on advanced privacy tech for many years, but it tends to be around, it tends to stop with the creation of a piece of technology and then fail to get the realization of enforceable privacy rights, for example, actually in the hands of millions of people. You have a very global footprint across Web3 epicenters around the world. Cultures vary in their perspective on privacy and civil liberties. How do you imagine that particular message of, we're doing all this, we're creating this data economy, but we won't be able to see the data unless we go through the same process any other party would want consent, we don't own it. And our entire raison d'etre is the continuous fortress-like defense of civil liberties and security and everything that a person needs in order to maintain and defend their digital sovereignty across the board. How do
Right.
you imagine translating our these messages in markets around the world? And do you see a lot of uniformity from the community around those values? Or do you see, well, just what do you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah. One analogy that I always like to give, and I think the problem in a deeper sense is people don't need a problem solved unless they really feel it. And so the example I always like to give is you will never download an app to skip a line unless you're standing at the back of a really long line. And so you have to experience that pinnacle moment of, okay, this matters to me and I really need it. And unfortunately, up until now, a lot of people have not felt that urgency when it comes to privacy, security, data sovereigns, and governance and overall protection in a digital sense. And we see it with our algorithms and the way that things are targeted to us. And it's if I went into the street of any city around the world and polled 100 people, I can probably guarantee very, very few of them could even explain how the internet works, and they don't care, and they also don't need to know the intricacies and the actual technology behind anything. What they need to know is that, okay, I'm attached to it, I use it every day, and it solves my problems, and I just don't even think about all the benefits that it's doing. But if it was taken away, then I would notice. And so the challenge in the marketing side, and I do think that now in a global sphere, people are waking up to this problem more than ever, understanding problems of why they don't own their data and they don't own their own digital identity and they don't have governance or sovereignty in these privacy standards. So it feels like the right time to be having those conversations, but it is hard to get people to buy in when, as you said, on the front end, their experience is not changing, and it's really in the back end, in terms of what's changing in the technology aspect. And one really topical example right now is we're seeing with 23andMe, and I'm sure everybody who wanted to know their ancestry never once considered that they're sending in these kits and that's data and they don't own it, and now they're just sharing it and it's going to be profited off of, and they're going to be taken advantage of their own data that they don't have ownership to. And so it's sort of that no one would have thought it's a problem until today they're filing for bankruptcy, and now 15 million users' data is sort of up in the air. So it's a bit of chicken and egg, which is unfortunate, but as long as we are the ones working to solve that problem today, it is something that obviously the world needs and that it will become very topical. And it feels like we're moving there at a very rapid rate with the expansion of AI and with the way that blockchain is being developed and adopted. So I do think it's obviously a tough ask to say that we need mass adoption, and it's something that's never come easy. And whatever is precedent to the existing technology has always had trouble. Even paintings had problems with books when they came out, and then radio had problems with TV when it came out, and then the internet, and then now it's crypto, and it's it's hard to understand and hard to grasp. So it's natural and it's so the human mindset and human way to absorb something new that we're uncomfortable with and to identify problems that we haven't thought of before. So it's it's a life cycle that is definitely going in the right area, and there's just a lot of pain points that need to be addressed throughout that. But it's a good time to be addressing it. I think I went on a bit of a tangent, but I hope I answered
Tangents are
your
allowed.
thoughts.
That's so you bring up the 23andMe bankruptcy proceeding,
Mhm.
that is rightfully front of mind at this point for many stakeholders. The on a recent previous episode of this show, we had our wonderful partner Genobank on the show with us, and their founder and CEO Daniel Uribe was a guest. We have working together AI Mind Systems and Genobank have such a tremendous impact potential. For those of you not familiar, Genobank has created something called bio NFTs, and an end-to-end process to ensure that a piece of digital biology, as it were, so the digital version, the computational digital biology version of an asset is contained in an NFT, placed in a person's sovereign and defensible framework, and integrates with laboratories that do genetic assessments and so on for things like precision oncolytics or all kinds of advanced diagnostics and so on. In our partnership together, we are adopting Genobank's technology for that class of digital assets and working together to activate those very, very important, discrete, and highly sensitive pieces of personal digital biology assets into the broader economic construct that can involve all aspects of precision health and well-being, and the ability to develop, instead of broadly generalizable AI models, instead self-sovereign precision AIs that can effectively radically empower individual people in ways that they can trust, that have no conflict of interest with the person. You have a deep history in the NFT space. You've done a lot of work in that space, and some of it spanned wellness. I just love I'd love your comment on, that is one very important NFT use case of ours through our Genobank partnership. I'd love, given all of your history in the NFT space, are you excited to see it coming full circle with, highly scientific and clinically impactful uses, such as, genomic data security and utilization?
Yeah, most definitely. I think NFT is in a lot of ways maybe considered a bit of a uh, trigger word and has a lot of negative connotation to it within the markets these days. And people have just been through the ringer when it comes to NFTs and launches. So back in 2021, when I was first getting really obsessed with NFTs, I definitely considered so many use cases that would be so astronomically beneficial to the world. And what we were seeing was a lot of community and a lot of fun projects, which is completely great, and community is very important. But what was unfortunate is that they never really got picked up, and they never went further beyond with it. And within that, there's maybe a handful of NFT collections that are still relevant over these last few years. And even then, I say relevance with a grain of salt, because obviously no one's really trading and volumes are really low. And so I think moving the mindset away from an NFT is this like asset held way to make money, and it's gonna inflate in price, and all these things that people first thought of when they thought of NFTs, to move away from that and to go into the use cases. And so the fact to have a science-backed NFT that's tied to what Genobank is doing, which they're doing exceptional things. And thank you, Pete, for sharing that, because big shout out to Daniel and everything that they're working on. It's very incredible. And this is, I think, what we all thought we would see more a couple years ago, but nonetheless, it's amazing to see that coming full circle now. And I do think that NFTs have its day, whether it's under maybe a different name or a different type of branding. I think that we should start to see a lot of really interesting use cases that is using the technology of a smart contract and actually deploying things on chain going forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really exciting in the sense that because we are very partnership minded. We are not looking to reinvent any wheels. We don't want to build anything that has already been built well, and by teams with shared values and a shared vision for the future. Uh, the implication of that for us is that we're going to be able to operationalize capabilities very rapidly. And yes, we will continue to adjudicate our own roadmap for niche and nuanced capabilities that have not ever been created in the world. That doesn't mean we're not going to be driving impact um, rapidly. And I also put in the Zoom chat the press release on our partnership with GenoBank. So if for anyone wants to take a look at that. So
Mhm.
just we can keep the conversation rolling, Rebecca, but just for the audience, if you are on Zoom, if you're participating through Zoom, which by the way, you have to register for the series in order to participate through Zoom, we would love to start incorporating your questions. And there's a Q&A dialogue box in Zoom. So we'll see them come in and we'll make a best effort to incorporate them into the conversation. So one of the things I'd like to pick your brain about a little bit, Rebecca, is about what has and has not been working well to get token launches of various types. Let's say mainly utility tokens, for example, actually in the market at relatively low cost. Like, could you speak a little bit to some of the tactics that you've observed going on in the industry and
Mhm.
things that we might do differently when our aim is not getting to degen traders who are wanting arbitrage opportunities and are wanting to use the asset for the purpose of trading as opposed to use the asset for its actual utility?
Mhm.
How are you thinking about how we go about things differently in that respect?
Yeah, tokens right now are definitely, I've seen some really great use cases and some better than others. And I've been a part of dozens at this point in terms of strategy and launches and advisory for a lot of different tokens in very different industries. And so there are a lot of tough points to be overcoming because yes, I can definitely understand this is a very serious project and we're doing incredible things. And so intuitively, we don't want the degen traders, but at the same time, the traders are the ones that are bringing volume and liquidity and actual movement to the token itself, which is important within itself too, because otherwise the token then is a little bit run to zero and it's now moved redundant. So it's a bit of a balance of attracting the right type of traders and the right type of holders versus the right type of liquidity providers. There are definitely a few strategies. It's also a lot of noise right now, and there's thousands of new tokens being launched every single day. And so cutting through all of these, and we're seeing presidents and not just Trump, but in other regions too. Everybody has a token now. Everybody's launching something. It's I don't really agree with it. I think that it's, a little bit using community as your own exit liquidity. And I think that's a little bit of the negative side of crypto. And I think some people launching tokens don't even realize that's what they're doing. And they're using a platform and a big name and getting all this money pushed into it that, they don't understand with tokens. If you're making money, it's because somebody else lost money. And so there's always a caveat of a trade was completed. And so it's, hard to exit that predatory cycle. The only other, I guess, pessimistic thing I'll add is that exchanges now too, it's very hard to enter the exchange market. They're extremely expensive. They can sometimes bring better opportunities than others, and it's, a lot of pros and cons in terms of going the centralized way as well. But then there are risks if you don't go centralized, and with decentralized, you really have to sustain everything yourself, and there's a lot of risk involved, and a lot of ways that individuals can snipe. So definitely a lot of things to be hot buttons and very almost like a minefield whenever launching a token. And so it's important that obviously we are considering all of these things and all of these metrics, and then doing so from a completely compliant and from an accountant fully buttoned up standpoint. It's a challenge, and it definitely is going to involve getting the right community involved, getting the right attention, the right backers as well, and the right opt-in and the right partners. So of course, it's an overarching ecosystem. What excites me about the way that the AI Minds token is structured is that we mentioned earlier that there is this umbrella with verticals that everything is being feeded into. And so to have sort of the lifeblood of the foundation be connected with different entry points into the token, I think that's going to offer a lot of sustainability, decrease a lot of selling pressure, and overall allow it to be more successful. So I mean, with anything, what constitutes a successful token launch and what I would strategize and advise towards is like always value first and business model first. And we're not looking to make money even off the token. It's a byproduct and it's necessity to the entire ecosystem to succeed. And I think positioning it that way, it's not without its own challenges, but it already positions at a better level compared to a lot of other projects, which again, no fault to them because they need the funding as well. So token is a desirable and sometimes easy opportunity to be able to get those funds. So I get it from the community standpoint, but there are definitely a lot of red flags to consider when launching a token, which is why it has to be done so with so much care. And I think unfortunately we see a lot of bad actors that are not really thinking much about what they're putting into the market and how it's actually harming other people.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. On these shows, we've been incrementally unpacking pieces and parts of our strategy for the last couple of months and our work in progress. When we get to more formal announcements of partnerships, of liquidity providers, of those types of things as we're progressing, we're going to have to make it some big reveals. There's so much in the works that we have not yet disclosed. It's exciting time.
Oh, I think Heather, she rage quit out of excitement. Hello, Pete.
Hey, hey. So here Heather comes back in. Okay. Apologies, folks.
Yeah, it's the passion from it. She might have hit the wrong button. Let's see here.
No
Yeah,
any
Heather, my
back in.
Zoom crashed. Well, yeah, Pete, how are you doing? How's your
I'm
day
doing
going?
great. I'm doing great. So excited to have you on board. I think it's going to be a fun ride for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Well, welcome back, Heather.
Oh, we were trying to
Thank
kill
you. I
time,
just
but
had a
we ran out
lovely
of jokes. So
into.
it's
Gonna go to my knock knock, and I'm glad you came back.
Got you. I'm so sorry. I apparently lost internet connectivity altogether for a moment there. That was special. Sorry about that.
No, no
Um,
worries. Yeah, we're saying you
all
rage quit
right.
because
Well,
you're passionate.
yes, I was super mad. Like, I'm out. That is,
Yeah.
that is all right. So as you are just activating in this new role. Oh my gosh. Tell me. Okay. Whew. I lost I lost something for a second. All is well. Uh, you are just activating in this new role, and I'd love to close out this conversation talking about you're taking on Web3 strategy and our all of our operations, business operations related to that. It's a huge role. There's so much going on. What kind of things are you planning to tackle first?
Yeah, good question. So first and foremost, I mean, obviously I'm excited and very eager to join. I have been definitely thinking about this for a few months since Heather, you and I have been speaking and going back and forth with a lot of things. So first and foremost, I think at least in my perspective of crypto and Web3, the best thing is to put your ear to the ground and figure out what people are really talking about and what they're looking for, and then having ways to insert yourself and to get initial feedback from, your most trusted circle and navigating sort of the initial people around you. So I am really excited to start circulating and to start advocating for AI minds in a more networking type of environment, and start sharing everything that we're doing, and hopefully bringing the right people in and getting the right excitement. And then from there, just slowly but surely building up the snowball and start, pushing it down the hill until it just takes a complete speed and form of its own. So it's a process, of course, and I'm definitely very excited to start diving in and tackling everything.
Amazing. I can't wait to work with you on all this. Um, so audience, so that you know, this is a monthly recurring show on the topic of a renewed hope in digital assets. Now, given Rebecca's new role, you're going to be hearing a lot from Rebecca over time on this show, and myself as well, and our guests. Thank you so much for attending today. Please note that if you would like to contribute to AI MINDSystems Foundation as a tax-deductible donor or as a volunteer on ai-mindsystems.org. We are working very hard on something called our National Hero Initiative, and we are explicitly looking for volunteers in the United States to help us advance that particular part of our impact mission. You can learn more about it on our site. And please stay tuned for more updates. And it was great to communicate with you all today. And Rebecca, once again, welcome aboard. Any closing remarks from you?
I think that you tackled everything perfectly, and I'm just excited to keep being part of the process. And yeah, I can't wait.
All right. Awesome. This was fun. Thanks everybody. Thanks Rebecca, and until next time.